Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name's Steve, and it's time to update some rankings. Running backs video came out Tuesday. This should be coming out Thursday. Going to be talking about the wide receiver updates, and we got the quarterbacks and the tight ends next week. And in the meantime, if you haven't been checking it out, there are some strategy videos out for 10-team, 12-team. I've started to release those, whether you're drafting from picks 1 through 3, 1 through 4, the middle round, or later round videos for each of those. So go check those on out if you want a little look-see there. Look, we're pinning down our rankings more and more each day. We're still about a month away, so there will be more stuff that's going to come out between then and now. But we're learning a lot of things, and people are getting suspensions. Jordan Addison, that just came down a little while before recording this. I had already ranked him expecting this kind of expansion. Almost certainly I did it expecting 3, to be perfectly honest. So I don't think I'm going to have to update his ranking, but why don't we see? It'll be updated since this point in time. So before we get into that, real quick, if you want to use I'll just show you. It's a cheat sheet, www.theffforge.com. There's a link in the description to all of my rankings as they continue to get updated all the way up through the early portion of the first week of fantasy football. That's also up on the website, and once again, link in the description to that. On the front page and on the page that you should be brought to, I believe, you'll see this little 2025 printable draft sheet. You click on that, it's going to bring you to this bar sheet, which you can see on screen, which I already need to update, even though I just created this earlier today, because I have done a few major shifts with some of my wide receivers, which good timing for that. Some running backs and stuff too, but why don't we get on into my updated rankings? So we're going to start out, and I had a big first tier. We're going to cut that down. We're still going to be 3 people, but it's actually going to be CeeDee Lamb coming up in here, and I currently have CeeDee Lamb ahead of Justin Jefferson, and that might be something that we'll actually see happen with Justin Jefferson and his hamstring injury currently. So those 3 are just my first tier, so we can just bring these guys right on down here. We'll just randomly do it. My next tier, I had Malik Neighbors moved up a little ways. I was afraid of the quarterback situation, everything. It wasn't good last year. He's so darn talented. I have some concerns with some of these other guys to some extent. I'm putting a bit of an emphasis on trying to draft for upside generally, of course. When it comes to receivers, I actually kind of, I want to be safe to a certain extent with my early picks in a draft generally. And I'll get more risky once, the bigger the league it is. But, once we get into past pick, what is it for me this year? Pick 30, even a little bit before that. Once we get to that area, then I'm really pushing the, just going for upside. I don't care to get a guy who's going to be the wide receiver 40. I want a guy who has a chance at being the wide receiver 20. Those types of decisions you will see in my rankings. But, I think that Malik, maybe not quite as safe as Nico. I don't know. Also, he's just so darn good, so electric, and coming into his second year. A.J. Brown's still a little bit higher in my rankings. I still have him 4 spots higher than ADP. Current ADP on him is 10th, and I say current very much purposely because I actually did ADPs twice today to compare them with these wide receiver rankings to point out some of the players I'm above or below on to some different extents. And several of them changed from a few hours earlier already. So, everything's liquid this time of the year. After A.J. Brown, we've got, like I said, I don't mind playing it a little safe, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then Brian Thomas Jr., who's also very, very good. There will be some sort of addition into Travis Hunter into this offense, which might take away some of his work. The connection with the starting quarterback also for Brian Thomas Jr. wasn't as good as it was with some of those backups last year. So I just still have a couple of concerns regarding him, but generally, obviously, still very positive on him. So those are the first 2 tiers in order. Brings us on to this third tier, which I have already started. But Puka Nacua, Ladd McConkey, and here are my previous tier 3 and tier 2 players all in here. And this is a smaller tier. Drake London, where are you? All the way over here. Drake London has moved up in my rankings a little bit. I am still a little bit shy on him. By the way, Puka Nacua. Actually, I'm 4 spots lower on Puka Nacua than ADP. A little bit lower, and this has everything to do with Matt Stafford and nothing to do with, well, and a little bit to do with Puka Nacua, because then the Matt Stafford injury concerns combined with the fact that Puka Nacua has not been healthy since, I don't know, grade school for an entirety of a season either. So there's just too many concerns going on for me for Puka Nacua in terms of my season-long trust of that whole situation. And then we've got T. Higgins, JSN. Come on down here. And to wrap this tier up, I do have Tyreek Hill in this tier. I don't think I've yet to draft him, but he's always right there as a potential draft pick for me. The upside still definitely remains. So the rest of these guys are all going to be pushed down another tier, and I'm going to go ahead and move this tier 4 down a spot. So if you want to see where I had some guys previously, well, now it's your last chance. This next tier is going to kick off with Garrett Wilson right at the top of it, followed by Devontae Adams, Mike Evans somewhere in here, DK Metcalf right behind that, who I'm a little bit higher on than ADP, and Terry McLaurin, who, the whole contract situation obviously isn't helping his ADP. We still expect plenty of time for that to get resolved, so we're not overly concerned about it either, but that is a concern. And then I have Marvin Harrison Jr. right behind that. I'm 4 spots lower on Marvin Harrison Jr. than ADP. I'm, just like last year. I just have my reservations in terms of that's a heavy rushing attack, in terms of how they utilized him last season. Are they really going to utilize him differently or not this year? I just don't think that that's a guarantee, because why would you make his life easier in year 2 compared to year 1? Year 1 was the year to ease him into that type of role, and yet they didn't last year. So I just have my concerns that the coaching staff is going to go out of their way to make him maybe a little bit more fantasy friendly. But of course, he's a great wide receiver, plenty of upside with that. Then I've got Cortland Sutton behind that, and DJ Moore, who's basically just not on my draft board, but we'll see. Zay Flowers, another kind of one of those guys, followed by Calvin Ridley, who I am higher on than ADP by 8 spots. Going to be the number 1 wide receiver in Tennessee. We know that he is a good receiver. I just think that there's a lot of upside with Calvin Ridley that slowly but surely the public is getting a little bit more high on, but hasn't quite gotten there. Then we've got a guy who I think is down here. Yeah, George Pickens. I was originally low on Dallas in general. I was expecting Dak Prescott to be missing some time to start the season. I was misguided in that assumption, and so I am much higher on Dallas in general. That defense probably isn't going to be very good. They've had a lot of injuries in that secondary too, so teams might be able to put points up against them. And if that's the case, all the more reason that they'll be passing more, plus that rushing attack's probably not going to be anything spectacular. So, a lot of reasons to like these guys. George Pickens, very talented, and I think will fit well there. I think, there's plenty of upside with him. And then we've got Rashee Rice is right behind him, was, of course, higher up on him earlier off in the off-season, but going to have some sort of suspension. That one has not come down yet. I would assume that might be coming down fairly soon. I'm currently more so expecting 2 games than I am 4 or more. So that's my thought process. You will have to hold him on your roster. I am 4 spots lower than him than ADP. I don't know if that's still reacting to the potential suspension, that he'll still go lower. I'd rather have him than not, but when it comes to all these guys ahead of him, the situation, season long and all, it's just a better situation. They don't cramp my roster at all. And there are some concerns about Rashee Rice. His sample size from last year's small. I'm not saying concerns that he's going to be bad. I'm just saying concerns that he'll be as good as he was for that 3-game sample size, and plus missing some time. I think the lighter, maybe rejuvenated, knowing he's going into his last season, Travis Kelce could eat into Rashee Rice's work a little bit, whereas Rashee Rice had eaten his workload. Maybe that's something where that connection develops early on. All right, my cat distracted me. Let's just go on to Devonta Smith. I have behind Rashee Rice. Low passing attack. I don't get overly excited about Devonta Smith volume-wise, low volume-wise. But, of course, especially if there's an injury to A.J. Brown, then he becomes really good. So that's always something to remember as well. As you're probably aware of... Oh, my cat. Behind Devonta Smith, we have Jamison Williams, who you should probably be aware of, that I've been typically a little bit low on, but we've come to a consensus in agreement, and somebody that you will, almost certainly a lot of you will be happy to see, lower in my rankings is Chris Olave. I have moved him down to the bottom of this tier basically because Tyler Shuck has not just claimed this starting job, and in fact, it looks like as of right now, a month before the season starts, plenty of time, Spencer Rattler might be the one to win the job, and that it was already not a great situation, but there was at least this possibility that Tyler Shuck could be, this year's Bo Nix or something. Not so much. Might be another cut. My cat's being ridiculous. In the interest of keeping up with upside, in terms of what I'm more looking for from my wide receivers here, just too much concern now for Chris Olave. So I've gotten lower on him, much closer to ADP now there. Tyrell McMillan's going to be the one to lead this next tier, as you might be surprised to know that I'm only 2 spots low on Tyrell McMillan according to ADP, because I don't usually talk good about him because I just don't really love the wide receivers around where he's going generally. But and also it's another upside thing where like I'm ranking him kind of higher than I actually expect, but at the same time, this is the tier where we get into the receivers where you'll see I'm starting to put a lot of the rookies in here, including Tyrell McMillan, of course, because I don't love the wide receivers after this point in the draft. I mean, I've already, DJ Moore, already concerns me a lot here. It's like, yeah, we're into an area of the draft where I'm just not loving it. Jalen Waddle's going to be up next. I'm just gonna do this tier and then we'll talk about it. So here's my 5th tier. We've got Tyrell McMillan, followed by Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, Jerry Jeudy, Trey Harris, Juwan Jennings, who would be higher, but there's just a potential injury going on / hold-in situation. So for now, he's a little bit lower, but the moment that gets resolved, he'll go back up in my rankings a little ways, and I'm already high on him compared to ADP. Khalil Shakir, Matt Golan, Jordan Addison, Jaden Higgins, Travis Hunter, Jacoby Myers, Roma Dunze, Xavier Worthy. So, some players in here. Chris Godwin, I'm a little bit higher on than ADP. The nice thing about Chris Godwin, if you draft him, is you can put him into your IR spot if you have IR spots. So that's going to be helpful. I'm not overly concerned about this, like him coming back from this injury and being completely not himself, like we've seen from a previous more severe injury in the past. But of course, that's possible. Maybe I'm not factoring that in quite enough to my concerns for Chris Godwin. But it's an upside thing. He was so darn good last year. Emeka Egbuka's there now. It's tough. I'm not going to get a whole lot higher on him if things change, nor am I going to get a whole lot lower on him. I'm not trying to draft him too harshly. A lot of times there's some running backs around this area of the draft where I'm going with anyways. Then we've got Jerry Jeudy. Trey Harris is going to be one of those arguments. I'm significantly higher on him than ADP. It's an upside thing. I think this LA Chargers offense has a chance of being pretty good, and if so, Trey Harris will probably be a pretty big part of that. So I am quite excited about the potential of Trey Harris doing well, and I think that he has one of the more clear paths. So this is a little bit of a safety argument along with like potential upside for Trey Harris with my pick here. We went over Juwan Jennings already, so I guess I scooped over Trey Harris before. Then we've got Khalil Shakir, who I am 6 spots higher on than ADP, but he does have a semi-significant injury right now. I think that'll be fine prior to the season starting. He is a veteran at this point, so I'm not overly concerned with him missing time. I'm more concerned with him getting healthy again, and I think that he has the time to get healthy. So I'm holding firm on him. he's one of those safe picks, not high upside picks, better in full PPR. Don't really need to bother drafting him in standard. I mean, at least, anywhere near this high. One of those players, it depends on my roster if I'm taking Shakir or not. I need to have probably gone strong running back first. I ended up with DJ Moore and Devonta Smith on my roster for some reason, and I just want somebody who I know I can put in there who's going to get a good amount of targets regularly, be nice and consistent for me. That's what Shakir is, so that's where I end up with him. Then we got Matthew Golden, also higher on him. It's the same story as Trey Harris, even the same story as Tyrone McMillan here, in terms of I'm just looking for an upside shot with my wide receivers. This is why I tend to want to get like 2 of these guys, preferably in a draft, and also will be very happy to have George Pickens, even if it's my wide receiver 2, but hopefully as my wide receiver 3, because I know that I'm going to be taking some of these shots on some of these other options later on in the draft. I mentioned it earlier, Jordan Addison, 3-game suspension. I've already been having him ranked with that in mind. I think his ADP has fallen because of that as well. Pretty much close to ADP with my ranking. Jaden Higgins, 14 spots higher on him than ADP, which is the same as the other rookies that we've talked about. Travis Hunter, I have very big concerns about with what that team's usage is, but some good news came out, I should say, what the planned usage is for him for the team that we've heard of so far throughout the offseason. But the first depth charts came out, and he was listed second team defense, first team offense. That's not a surprise. That's why earlier on in the offseason, I had Travis Hunter significantly higher in my rankings. And now I'm low on him. I was high on him at the time. I can't seem to get on base. But this is one of those players where the closer we get, the more I might move him up, essentially. I probably wouldn't move him down from here too much. I think, there's just always enough potential there anyways. Very good receiver. Jacoby Myers, I'm right on ADP with Jacoby Myers. Rome Odunze, Xavier Worthy to wrap this tier up. Actually, there's one more player in this tier who just made it into this tier, but I'm a little bit lower on Rome Odunze, and I actually moved him up a little bit recently. I moved him back down. The news on Caleb Williams coming out on camp, just not been very good. That's been my concern. I felt like Caleb Williams has been, we'll get to the quarterbacks, but I'll be interested to see where his ADP has moved. I assume it's gone down by this point. And then Xavier Worthy, I'm significantly lower on, 17 spots lower than ADP. Early season, he might be helpful for you, but assuming Marquise Brown gets and or stays healthy, which I guess is an assumption, and Rashee Rice comes back within 2 weeks, I just don't want a guy who I don't think is going to be consistent at all. That's all that it comes down to. It worries me. That's to bring us on to the last guy in this tier is Emeka Egbuka. There we go. Emeka Egbuka just making his way into this tier. I had to look inwards upon myself. I like the talent of Emeka Egbuka a lot. I was very much in on him at that point in the NFL draft. I just didn't like this scenario. I still don't love it, but it almost seems for certain that he's going to have 4 weeks to prove himself. The camp news on him has been very positive, which doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's better than bad news, that's for sure. And so I'm actually, oddly enough, I'm 4 spots higher than ADP on him, and I've been right around ADP basically all off season, despite the fact that I always talk poorly about him. It's an upside thing here. I still very well probably won't be drafting Emeka Egbuka, but I totally get the opportunity that is possibly present. I just think there's a lot of roadblocks to it, but he belongs in this tier. He makes it into this tier, and I think he's going to continue to be in this tier. For the final tier, we have a new name coming into the fold, which is Ricky Pearsall. This tier is not going to be this long. We're going to be moving some names out of it, but Ricky Pearsall is my 45th ranked wide receiver, followed by Keon Coleman, who I am 5 spots higher on than consensus on Keon Coleman. This is it's just an upside thing. I don't think he's going to break out, but he could, and that could be very good in that offense with Josh Allen. And if we're expecting fewer touchdowns for James Cook, I want to say James Jones and then James Conner, but if we're expecting fewer touchdowns for James Cook, those touchdowns are probably going somewhere. I mean, I don't really think that we're expecting this offense to get worse overall this year. I don't think we feel like they overproduced last year. Those touchdowns are going to be going somewhere. Maybe it goes to Keon Coleman if they're not going to him. I don't know. It's one of those upside things, and when it comes to between him and Cooper Kupp, who I am lower on, who's next up on my list, that's the only. It depends what my roster looks like on which one of them I'm drafting. But if I have to put one ahead of the other, I'm going to take the shot on that upside in terms of where I have them ranked. But it's not a big deal. Josh Downs actually right behind that. There's another one. I'm very, very concerned about it. I'm kind of okay drafting him, but I just think Tyler Warren's going to eat into too much of his stuff, and it looks like it's not going to be Daniel Jones at the quarterback, which also does not help things for the receivers there in Indianapolis. So I'm just not very excited to get Josh Downs on my roster. Stephon Diggs, maybe I should move Stephon Diggs ahead of Josh Downs, actually thinking of upside, but I'm also very concerned about a wide receiver coming back off of a serious injury at his age, who I think is going to be playing on the outside pretty succinctly, and I just don't know how consistent. I just don't think he's going to be reliable enough, even if he's good in terms of if he plays the full season. The end of the year numbers look pretty decent, but when it comes to the actual experience of having him on your team, it was not fun. I feel like that could be a situation. And Jack Besh is actually the last guy in this tier. Still, I'm not deterred. I'm 11 spots higher than ADP on him. I'm not deterred by the news of him starting off with the second-team offense early on in the offseason. I think that will correct itself before we get to the season. Of course, if it doesn't, then I might lower him by that point. But I don't love the next tier, which we're going to start to talk about in just a short bit. So Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown, come on. Gosh, Demario Douglas, just outside of this. Deebo Samuel we'll talk about in just a little bit. Michael Pittman we'll talk about. DeAndre Hopkins not involved here. Rashid Shaheed. And a couple of names. So names that are in the ADP top 50, but not in my top 50, are going to be Jayden Reed, who I actually have just behind this. Jayden Reed is my 51st ranked receiver. I feel like I should have a name tag for him, so I don't know if he got lost in the shuffle somewhere up here and I didn't catch it. That might be possible, but maybe I've just been low on him all offseason. So I'm 7 spots lower on him. I don't love slot receivers who are on offenses that are going to be rush first offenses and don't have a whole lot of passing volume, because in the slot you kind of rely on volume. Now he does have a deeper ADP than your typical slot receiver, so that does help him to have those bigger games, but when it comes to those consistency concerns of mine, that I do not love those inconsistent guys, I don't see it with the addition of Matthew Golden in there, especially as the year goes along. Then via ADP, Deebo Samuel is ranked 38th overall. I'm ranked all the way down 54th. You talk about concerns about it hasn't been too pretty as of late. I don't really think it's going to get a whole lot prettier, so I'm significantly lower on him. I think he is getting drafted off of his name by a lot of people. I don't think that he should be a borderline wide receiver 3 draft pick. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Michael Pittman, I'm a little bit lower on as well. I have him ranked 56th. He is 50th via ADP. And Brandon Ayuk is currently still going 49th via ADP. I don't know if people were positive. It looks very clearly that he's not going to be starting the season healthy. To me, this feels a lot like Nick Chubb last year and how I was just out on him. I love the talent. I love the player. I've drafted him just last year. I won't be having him on my team this year. And I think that some of you are drafting him a little too high with too high of expectations for what you might get from that. So those are my top 50 receivers there on the screen via the tiers. Everything in, links in the chat. Talked about that at the beginning of the video. So that's it, guys. You have a good one. Check out my other videos as they come out. Like, comment, subscribe to do that. Peace out.